Welcome to another episode of The Brand Called You, a podcast and podcast show that brings you leadership lessons, knowledge, experience, and wisdom from thousands of successful individuals from around the world. I am your host, Ashutosh Garg, and today I'm delighted to welcome a very, very accomplished professional from Baltimore, Maryland, USA, Kara Redman. Kara, welcome to the show.
Hi, thanks for having me.
Kara is the Chief Executive Officer and founder of Backroom, which is a brand strategy and activation agency. So, Kara, before we talk about branding and Backroom, tell me a little bit about your own journey.
Sure. I actually started out as a teen mom and had to find jobs, never went to college. Well, I went, but I never finished. And so my journey was really one about more survival, right? I didn't have a huge support blanket. So I didn't really have the opportunity to do the whole choose your path. But what I did do in terms of like the decisions I made for the next job, I knew really early on I didn't want to continue working in restaurants and retail. It was very painful for me to just show up and have to be in a certain place at a certain time for very little return. So I tended to look at things that just felt glamorous to me or things that felt interesting. And after working in-house for a few places for jobs that were just jobs that I could get and I needed a job, right? I think that's something we don't talk about a lot is sometimes you just need the job. It's not your passion. That I thought that I just thought agencies were really glamorous and cool and they had this like sex appeal to them. Little did I know. And so I applied to some, never got the job, kept trying. I even sent a gift basket to one of the CEOs of who is now my competitor, you know, with my resume in it, please give me a chance. But I didn't have the college on my resume. I didn't have the experience. So I just kept trying and I worked for a few agencies and learned so much. I was very blessed to have leadership at a couple that really taught me a lot and saw the things that I wasn't getting and explained them to me and didn't make me feel stupid. And I didn't like the model. I still had that same feeling that I had working retail in a restaurant. If somebody's making me be here at a certain time for very little return, and so much of it was not in my control, whether it was what I was working on that day or you know, how I worked, or could I just, if it was raining and cold and I was tired and my kid was sick, can I just stay in my jammies and have a hot cup of coffee in bed? And the answer was no, you know? So I got really tired and decided somewhat on a whim that I would try to do it on my own. And it was an experiment. I knew if it didn't work, I could get another job easy. And 9 years later, 9 years this month, we're still here.
Amazing. And as I say, the rest is history, right?
Exactly.
Wonderful. So tell me about Backroom. You know, what are you doing here and what was your motivation to start?
The biggest motivation was what I just described of there has to be a better way to work. I knew my own potential. I could see the potential of the people around me and going, this is not, we could create big, beautiful things if we weren't so angry and tired all the time, right? So that was one big piece. Another was the traditional agency model is set up around billable hours, and they're really rigid in their scope often. And the clients that I was sitting across from weren't hitting goals. And so there's this model of let's get all the sales in as much as we can, charge them top dollar for senior strategists, but really give them junior help. And we weren't moving the needle for them at all. And so it just was this like rinse, repeat of soul sucking work that you knew was never going to impact anything. And I was really young then. So I just felt like I had all this energy and you know, passion for what I was doing and it wasn't going into anything. And so you do that a few times, Ash, and then you're sitting there with the next project and you're going, this doesn't matter. Give it 100% because no one cares. You get into that no one else cares mentality. It's awful. Some people can hide in that. I can't. And so focusing on brand was really important to us. So everything we do now at Backroom is brand led, but really our mission is how do we always look 3 steps behind for the people who were, you know, Kara working those jobs or retail or restaurants or the single parent, you know, making less than 20 grand a year. How do we open the door for those people too? And so our ultimate goal is to get where we're helping to get people more jobs and better models that work for them, that have the flexibility, challenge leaders to do more because, hey, you're missing out on what I think I was a great potential and talent to have. And I didn't have opportunities to show that because I was a parent and didn't have any money. or childcare. And then eventually really starting to think about cohorts and how can we bring in people who are stuck in that I'm working 3 jobs with 2 kids by myself cycle, provide them childcare, just give them equitable spaces to come up with new ideas and help them nurture those. That's really our end goal.
Wow.
So
Wow.
there
What a
are
great
a lot of
story.
steps. Yeah, there are a lot of steps to get there, but that's our dream.
Amazing. What a great story. So, you've been involved with brands for a long time. I'm sure you've been asked this question many times. What goes into building a successful brand?
So much. It starts with the people. 100% starts with the people. We from day one said no to clients that came in and they had a get rich quick idea. If we talk to a founder or a marketing director, or CEO, or anybody that comes to us and they don't want to create something for the people that are buying from them, if they're not concerned with the impact that they have on the people that are buying for them, they're not going to work well with us, and they're not going to be a great brand. Especially with how social media, and you and I were talking about this before we started, right?
Yeah.
Social media has changed everything and has created transparency where a lot of industries had opacity before, right? A lot of companies were really opaque. I can pick up my phone and engage with Pepsi right now, right? Like that didn't exist 10 years ago.
Correct.
And so I think that brands now are challenged to think more about impact, and because they're being checked, there's accountability in place.
Correct.
So I just posted this morning about this as well. Of like, people think that brand is some ethereal like spirit, that nobody can touch, you can only feel. But brands that are really thinking about, how do I measure my impact? How do I measure sentiment around my brand? Can people remember me when they're talking about a problem they have in my space? If they see my logo or my name, do they know what we stand for? The brands that think about business in that way are the ones that are tapping into emotions of people in our lizard brain, right? The amygdala stuff that makes us make irrational decisions. The brands that are winning on that level and creating really meaningful connection on the emotional level are the ones that stick, right? If you really think about it, Coca-Cola is sugar water.
Correct.
Look at that brand.
Absolutely.
Right?
Absolutely. And yet, my next question is that brands are really living beings. They need to be nurtured like babies throughout their life. Some brands like Coca-Cola may be 100 years old. Some die within a few years. My question is, how do brands stay relevant for a long period of time?
Listen and adapt. The world is adapting and changing. And it goes with, we talked about like personal brands and corporate brand, like actual businesses. Brands that are corporate, that deal with consumers, have to be consistent on some level. Going back to my example of Coca-Cola, they've changed their logo very little.
Yep.
In the 100+ years they've been around. It's very, very small incremental changes just to kind of adapt with the times. Brands that try to react and change completely based on what's going on in the world fail. Gap is a great example of this. They spent a lot of money to completely overhaul their brand. They didn't talk to their customers. They didn't test. And they got a lot of pushback, right? And then what they did in response to that pushback is even worse. They changed back. So they're not standing for anything. They're not leading away and saying, I know change is hard, come with us. They're going, oh, sorry, we didn't mean to upset you. And that doesn't build trust or loyalty, right? So it's those types of things that I think are really important, of listening to what your customers have to say, but also having a vision and making people feel like they're a part of that vision and bring them along. It's building that sense of community.
Yeah. Great response. Thank you. My next question is on, as an agency, with working with so many brands, what is involved in nurturing a brand through its life cycle from the perspective of an advertising agency?
It's measurement. I mean, the stuff that no one really likes to talk about because it's not sexy is data. And so for us, it's what is the goal for the brand? Sometimes the goal for the brand is to be acquired, and that's fine. We'll look at the valuation of that brand over time. Sometimes it's to grow exponentially. And then we're looking at opportunities to do brand collaborations to increase equity in those brand names, or maybe I want to raise my price point, and we're looking at opportunities to do that as the brand gets more sticky. So it always goes back to what the actual goal for the brand is. And a hint is not just to make more money, right? Like the goal of the brand it has to be something but more finite than that. So we're always looking at what is the goal of the brand? What are the real problems that this brand solves for people out in the real world? And then measuring the impact of those over time. And it can change, right? The world is changing exponentially faster than it was 5-10 years ago, right? So really it is looking at how do I listen, and whether it's social media or doing NPS scoring or surveys or focus groups. And then how do we respond to that as a brand in a way that's not reactionary?
And how is technology beginning to change the way you are doing your work? And how is technology changing branding?
This is such a great question. I was thinking the other day, I don't know how my forefathers in the agency business did it without email, I'm like, what were you knocking on doors? How did you maintain your clients? But then I think on the flip side, clients had less options, right? Because it was just kind of whoever was in their backyard. Technology is changing our business every year. I mean, look at AI right now. We're doing, instead of, paying my Illustrator animation and design to concept, we're concepting in AI. And then what they pick, then we put to our design team. So the efficiencies of what we have in terms of what we're able to produce is fantastic. The playground that we have is great. The challenge that it creates for our clients is that, 50 years ago, we had community already just within our daily lives and didn't crave it. Technology has opened the entire world up to us as individuals. And so brands now have the challenge and opportunity to recreate communities, right? So we no longer have the benefit of just, I know everybody at the grocery store because this is just where I live. Most of us stay in our homes and have things brought to us, and we don't have to interact with humans anymore. So technology has impacted our work, whether it's client or how we work individually as a team. We're 100% remote. My director of ops is in Portland, Oregon, and I'm in Baltimore. And we work really well 4 days a week because we have these tools. They become our operating system.
Correct. But you mentioned you don't know how people used to do it in the earlier days. I'll share with you. I was very young, and I'm talking of 4 decades ago. The big agencies used to come for India Tobacco's advertising strategy, etc. And there used to be these massive flip charts, which used to be rolled, handwritten, put onto a board, and then flipped one after another. And you're absolutely right. I don't know how we did it then, but it seems to have worked then also. So, but moving on, I wanted to ask you that, with the change in the platforms that are now available, in all the digital formats, how are traditional formats like print and television adapting themselves?
Depends on the brand. Some not at all. But what we're seeing more is that where television or a full page print ad was the marketing strategy is now part of a larger integrated campaign, right? There's still a place for print. There's still an emotional reaction you get just from the tactile feeling of the paper that was chosen and the colors, right? Or when you open your magazine and you see that beautiful spread, and we still do a lot of that work. It needs to be part of a larger strategy. So we're seeing, QR codes in TV commercials. We're seeing calls to action that drive you to digital formats. We're seeing opportunities to do things out of home that are integrated into a larger experience, even with geofencing, right? We can place billboards in areas that we're geo-targeting people and give them richer experiences that are more educational versus that's the billboard, buy or don't buy, right? We used to call the old spray and pray technique of just hoping the right people see it, that we can use it as part of a larger strategy. So, we had so much content going around a few years ago about how print is dead, and no, it's not. I mean, a lot of us still love to hold books. I still read my Baltimore Business Journal at the table. I still get the New Yorker print. I like to read them, and I'm not alone in that. And I'll go back to metrics. It all comes back to the data. People are still buying from direct mail. They're still buying from out of home. That doesn't mean use it as a tactic. It means if it makes sense within your integrated marketing mix, try it, test it, see if it works.
Well said. And yet the communication landscape is changing dramatically for brands. Everything now is on your little handheld device. How is this forcing brands to adapt to a much, much smaller and a much faster format?
For us, it's made it a little bit easier because I kind of was raised up in agency in the thought leadership white paper era, which was, everything was over strategized. Everything was a huge lift. And right now, low production quality wins. It's almost the worse the video quality, the better the performance, right? I talked earlier about just the ability to pick up your phone and have access to just about anybody, and the shorter format makes it a lower barrier to entry. I love it because we've seen the rise of so many smaller businesses winning, music artists out of their home during the pandemic winning that did not have a platform 5-10 years ago. So the brands that are adapting are taking all of this rich content mine, what's performed high, whether it's a thought leadership piece or a 15-minute video, and then how can we take that content and repurpose it in TikTok? How can we repurpose multiple formats of content into things that are bite-sized and still drive people to the larger content format so that you can see it. But to me, it's opened up for us at Backroom, it's opened up the opportunity to create more content formats that don't have to be so polished. The grammar doesn't have to be perfect in these formats. They're very raw, they're human, they're almost voyeuristic, right? Because they're very vulnerable in just how you are in that moment. And I really think that like the more we've had this exposure to technology over humans, we ironically are craving human interaction more. So the more real and unpolished the content is, the better it performs.
Correct. Well said. And yet, there's so many social media platforms which are giving opportunities for brands to be able to showcase themselves. How does a company determine which is the right platform for them?
Data, data and testing. So for us, we always start with what we call our ideal customer profile. Most people are familiar with this. And it's not, here's Nancy, she's 50 and has 3 kids. It's not useful to me. What are Nancy's problems? What is she stressed out about? How can our brand or our services potentially help her with that problem?
Correct.
And then where's she getting information? We do like a thinking, feeling, doing matrix. Thinking, like what questions does she have? Feeling, is she anxious, stressed, excited? And then what is she doing? Is she talking to her friends? Is she in forums? Is she doing absolutely nothing? And we have to seek her out. And that gives us information on the platform, right? And you can get a lot of demographic information, right, from these platforms to see who's there. But it's really the metric of success is whether or not your message is resonating, whether you're giving it action, if you're changing a human behavior based on the things that you're doing. So a lot of folks will go, oh my gosh, well, TikTok's hot. We have to be on TikTok now, right? Or we have to be on Instagram. We have to be doing these things. But if you don't know what you're looking for to see if it's working, you're just trying to do everything. And maybe you're not getting impact. So it's have a plan, treat it like a science experiment. What am I going to measure? And if it doesn't work, what's next? If it does work, you lean into it.
Well said. And when I'm talking about many, many years ago, there would be either a movie star or a sports star or some, senior, well-recognized individual who would be associated with a brand. And now we've got this new breed of influencers and micro-influencers. I'd love to get your perspective on how are influencers impacting brands?
I think they have a similar effect to what you just described about that social proof of seeing an endorsement from someone they trust. The interesting thing with influencers is we know it's an ad, right? It's got a hashtag. There's some paid partnership label.
Correct.
But I find that the most impactful thing about an influencer marketing strategy is that consumers get to see a product in context of how it would be used. And I think that that's something that's missing for a lot of brands when they market, is they'll show a product with really beautiful lifestyle branding. And there's a great place for that, right? We love the pop. But to be able to show it in the context of someone's home and how they use it, I think is what brings that realness to it. It brings I see a little bit of myself in this post, and then it brings people into that community. A lot of us are looking for something to follow. A lot of us are looking for someone to kind of show us, whether it's how do I design my home or how do I feed my dog, and to be able to buy into something that feels like a community. That's what influencers are providing. I think a really smart influencer strategy is one that brings an influencer and a brand together, where that influencer would already be using that product, would already endorse it, and then just amplifying it. People can see if it's fake. if it doesn't make sense to them, or if it doesn't fit within that influencer's brand, then you're not acting either, right? If it's a product that you really are excited about, then you're actually showing it in that context, as well as, getting paid for the placement.
Well said. So I have time for two more questions, Kara. And next question is on the metaverse. This seems to have presented some incredible opportunities, and big brands like Nike, etc., seem to be acquiring huge real estate for their brands in the metaverse. I'd love to get your perspective on how should brands react to the metaverse.
This question is a little difficult for me because we haven't explored much in metaverse, because from our perspective, it's not real. We have social platforms, we have digital platforms. I think that a lot of times the tech industry likes to brand things as though they're the next big thing, when it's really more of the same. It's a little bit of a trend that we're not subscribing to at the moment.
Okay.
So that's one that I don't know that I can really speak.
I understand. Fair enough. We'll pass this. And my last question to you, Kara, and this is for the thousands of people who will listen to our conversation. Based on your deep understanding of branding, what would you say are 3 lessons you would want a lot of our young viewers and listeners to take away? And a lot of them are startup entrepreneurs. What should they be doing for their brands?
I think number 1 is trust your gut. Because a lot of times we get really bogged down, especially when you have investment. You start getting really numbers focused, which is great. You want to make money, but there's a reason you started this. And a lot of the startup founders that we work with that are successful, it's because they created this product because they wanted it and they see something in it. The second piece is don't underestimate product market fit. This is going to sound a little contrary to what I just said, but just because you're excited about it doesn't mean anyone's going to buy it. And this is something you can test on small levels, right? You can spend $500 to take out an ad on LinkedIn or Instagram for a survey, right? And incentivize it with a gift card to ask people, is this something that you would purchase? You can do focus groups, talk to your friends, right? There are ways to test this in small scale. Be receptive to the feedback you get is my third. I had coffee with a friend the other day, and we were talking about a startup founder he'd worked with for a while that I also knew. And he wasn't successful because he would do customer surveys, but he would only talk to the customers he knew were really excited. So you have to be able to put your ego aside and take the feedback, because if you focus on winning, if you focus on making the brand win, it's not about you.
Well said. Well said. And on that note, and your 3 wonderful lessons, trust your gut, don't underestimate the product market fit, and the third one, be receptive to feedback. Thank you, Kara, for speaking to me about your incredible journey, all the things that you've done before you started your own company, Backroom. Thank you for talking to me at such length about branding, communication, and advertising. Thank you for speaking to me, and good luck.
It was my pleasure. Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you for listening to the Brand Called You videocast and podcast, a platform that brings you knowledge, experience, and wisdom of hundreds of successful individuals from around the world. Do visit our website, www.tbcy.in, to watch and listen to the stories of many more individuals. You can also follow us on YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. Just search for the Brand Called You.